She brought her little girl on a blind date, but the single dad's reaction changed everything. She almost turned back at the cafe door. For a brief second, her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. And the familiar thought returned, the same one that had followed her everywhere. Since she became a mother, maybe this was a mistake. Not the date itself, but bringing her daughter along. Blind dates were complicated enough. Blind dates with a toddler were an unspoken rule most people never crossed. Still, she had crossed it. Not out of stubbornness, but out of necessity and honesty. This was her life now, and she was done pretending otherwise. Her little girl shifted in her arms, small fingers clutching the fabric of her red dress. Eyes wide with curiosity as she looked around the unfamiliar space. The child's weight grounded her, reminding her why she was here. Why she could not keep postponing the idea of moving forward. She adjusted her grip gently and stepped inside. At a corner table near the window, he sat waiting. She recognized him instantly, not because they had met before, but because there was something unmistakable about a man who was both calm and tense at the same time. His posture was straight, hands clasped loosely in front of him, eyes scanning the room with quiet expectation. When his gaze landed on her, it didn't immediately soften. Instead, it froze. She saw the exact moment realization struck. His eyes moved from her face to the child in her arms, and something shifted. Surprise came first, sharp, unguarded, then confusion. His brows drew together slightly, his lips parting as if he wanted to speak but didn't know how to begin. She had seen this reaction before, in different forms. Some people masked it with politeness, others with awkward smiles, and a few with thinly veiled disappointment. She had prepared herself for all of it. What she hadn't prepared for was the silence. She walked toward the table, heels clicking softly against the floor, every step feeling louder than the last. When she reached him, she paused, offering a restrained smile that carried both apology and defiance. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi," he replied, his voice steady but lower than expected. His eyes flicked once more to the little girl, who now studied him with open curiosity, her finger resting thoughtfully against her lips. There it was. The moment. "I should probably explain," she said before he could ask. Her tone was calm, practiced. "My babysitter canceled last minute. I understand if this isn't what you signed up for." She didn't sit. She didn't assume anything. She stood there, waiting, bracing herself for the polite excuse that would follow. She had already rehearsed her own response in her head. "Okay. I understand, no hard feelings." But he didn't reach for his coat. He didn't look away. Instead, he leaned back slightly, exhaled through his nose, and studied her more carefully this time. Not just the situation, but her. "How old is she?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. 2.5, she answered, her grip on her daughter loosening just a little. He nodded, as if filing the information away. "She looks like she knows exactly what's going on." The corner of her mouth lifted despite herself. She always does. The little girl chose that moment to wave at him, slow and deliberate, as if testing his reaction. He blinked, then gave a small, awkward wave back. Something subtle changed in his expression, not warmth yet, but openness. "Do you want to sit?" he asked, pulling out the chair opposite him. "Both of you." Her breath caught for just a fraction of a second. She hesitated, searching his face for pity or obligation, but found neither. What she saw instead was something more complicated. Curiosity mixed with caution, and beneath it, something unspoken. She sat. The child settled on her lap easily, resting against her chest as if this was the most natural place in the world. A waiter approached, and before she could speak, the man ordered a glass of water and a warm milk without even asking. She looked at him, surprised. My son used to like it when he was that age, he said quietly. Eye still on the table. Used to. The word lingered between them. You have a son? She asked. Yeah, he replied. He stays with my parents during the week. Something about the way he said it careful. Contain told her there was a story there, one that hadn't been easy to live through. The conversation moved forward slowly at first, like two people stepping onto thin ice. They talked about safe things, work schedules, favorite cafes, how hard it was to find time that actually belonged to you. The little girl listened more than she spoke, occasionally tugging at her mother's hair or tapping the edge of the table. At one point, she dropped her small pink shoe. Before the mother could lean down, he was already there, picking it up gently and placing it back in the child's hands. His fingers lingered for just a second, as if the action had unlocked a memory he hadn't expected. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded, then looked up at her, really looked at her this time. You didn't mention you had a child. I know, she replied. Most people don't ask. That's not what I meant, he said. I'm just surprised. She met his gaze evenly, in a bad way. He considered the question longer than necessary. No, he said finally. In an honest way. That answer stayed with her. As the minutes passed, the tension she had walked in with began to loosen its grip. She found herself laughing quietly at first, then without restraint. The child leaned toward him once, then again, offering him a crumb from her snack as if he had passed some invisible test. He accepted it. When the date should have ended, it didn't, and when she finally stood to leave, adjusting her daughter against her shoulder, she noticed something she hadn't seen when she arrived. He wasn't looking for an exit. He was watching them walk away, his expression unreadable, as if something inside him had been stirred. Something he hadn't planned on facing that day. And she knew, without knowing why, that this meeting was not going to be forgotten. She truly believed the cafe would be the end of it. Life had taught her not to expect continuity, only moments. So when his message arrived later that night, calm and thoughtful, asking if she and her daughter had reached home safely, it unsettled her in the gentlest way. There was no hesitation in his words, no avoidance of what he had seen. He didn't treat her child like an inconvenience or a surprise that needed explanation. He treated her like a fact of life. That alone made her listen differently. Their conversations didn't rush forward. They unfolded. He asked about her days, her routines, and the small victories that came with raising a child alone. She learned about his son, about evenings filled with homework and silence, about how loneliness could exist even when life was full. There was no need to compete with each other's struggles. Instead, there was understanding, steady and unforced. When they met again, it felt intentional. Not a test, not a gamble. Her daughter recognized him immediately, her reaction natural and trusting. He hesitated only for a moment before responding, as if he were stepping carefully into something meaningful. Holding the child made him realize how much he had missed being fully present, how fear had kept him distant even from the things he loved most. They didn't pretend things were easy. There were days when schedules collided, when exhaustion replaced patience, when old wounds surfaced unexpectedly. But instead of withdrawing, they learned to talk through the discomfort. He learned that strength didn't mean carrying everything alone. She learned that allowing someone in didn't mean losing control of her life. One evening, when the world felt quiet for once, he confessed what he had never admitted before. Seeing her walk into the cafe with a child had terrified him, not because of her, but because it mirrored his own reality too closely. Responsibility, attachment, the risk of caring deeply again at all stood in front of him at that table. Walking away would have been easier. Staying had been a choice. She understood. She told him bringing her daughter wasn't meant to challenge him, only to be honest. She had spent too long making herself smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. If someone couldn't accept her life as it was, then they weren't meant to be part of it. Time revealed what words could not. He became a steady presence, earning trust through consistency rather than promises. She became a place of safety, not by fixing him, but by standing beside him. Together, they discovered that family wasn't about perfection or timing. It was about choosing to stay, even when fear whispered otherwise. What began as an unexpected moment on a blind date grew into something real. Not a fairy tale, but a story shaped by courage, honesty, and the willingness to face life as it truly was together.